What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And Prop 36, I've talked about it on lives and that kind of stuff, but here's my video that I've been talking about doing, and I'm finally getting out. There's a lot involved with Prop 36. What I'm gonna address is the parts that I think are harmful. Right? This is three strikes. It's the three strikes of 2024. And regardless of what people say now, I guarantee if this passes, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, probably sooner than that, folks will be looking at this the same way that people looked at three strikes and how it was abused to do much more than what the voters thought, right? Because if you remember, three strikes was these dudes preying on kids and whacking them and all this other stuff. And then what ended up happening, right? People who do crazy stuff to kids still oftentimes get a slap on the wrist. But yeah, you had people doing life sentences for pizza and VHS tapes and all kinds of other nonsense. Because when you give prosecutors the power to do things, they stretch that and they stretch the context in which they can operate as far as possible. And it takes years and years and years before the public kind of gets on board with reversing some of that harm. Okay. And Prop 47 was a part of that now Prop 36 is claiming it's going to fix. It's nonsense. It's a shell game. So, and for those that don't know, this is a proposition on the ballot in California that's getting a lot of attention. And it actually has a lot of support. And it has support from some pretty curious characters, right? Mayor of San Francisco, who I can't stand anyways. But mayors of some of these big Democratic, controlled cities are behind this. And it's politics. It's because money's been put in their pocket, right? Because Target and Walmart and 7-Eleven and everybody else is behind this. But this is not going to do anything to really impact what they're experiencing. So let me explain. There's the three parts that I'm critical of is the creating of the creating of this treatment mandated felony category, right? Which is just born out of thin air for drug cases, right? Drug cases now becoming felonies instead of misdemeanors. And then the whole 2 prior shopliftings, the third one's a felony, you go to prison for 3 years. And then if 3 or more commit shoplifting or property damage together, then it's 3 years in prison also. And I'm going to explain why. So Prop 36 is a response, quote unquote, to Prop 47. Prop 47, in large part, that's what it is. Prop 47 said that drug cases would be misdemeanors instead of felonies. And the reason for it was like 10 years ago in California. And the reason for it was, for one, the communities were upset. A lot of people were catching a lot of time in prison for dope cases. That was then creating a lot of issues for the system outside of prison to have to deal with, right? Parents getting incarcerated, kids going into foster care, people losing jobs, it was a mess. But it also ballooned the California Department of Corrections to sizes that it couldn't keep up with, to the point that the federal court was like, this is unconstitutional. Your prison population is so overcrowded and so mismanaged that this is ridiculous and you have to do something about it, right? You don't have a choice. And so Prop 47 comes out and it says, hey, if you catch a dope case, it's a misdemeanor now instead of a felony. Didn't mean you don't go to jail. Didn't mean you don't get in trouble. Just meant it wasn't a felony. And the money that's going to be saved by not as many people going to prison, because we know that incarcerating people in the California Department of Corrections is incredibly expensive. We know that treatment is less expensive. We know that the recidivism rate for people who go through treatment is lower, right? The rate of people who then wind up getting in trouble again is lower than the recidivism rate for people who go to prison for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years on these dope cases. Those are just facts. That's the way that things are, right? No matter how you feel about it. And so the money saved by reducing the prison population will then get poured into services, not just for those catching dope cases, but also preventative stuff, K through 12, truancy prevention, victim services, all kinds of shit, right? But that's where the money was going to come from. So there was money attached to Prop 47. There is no money attached to Prop 36. And I'm explaining to you why that's a real problem. It's You increase it now to a felony. Oh, there's a report, right? There's a report that a lot of people in favor of Prop 36 are citing that says participation in drug court programs dropped after Prop 47. Once you made it a misdemeanor, people didn't want to go to drug court anymore. They didn't care about treatment because it's a slap on the wrist. They didn't give a shit. They just went and played with their elbow, smoked a pipe, and did their thing. That's a half truth. And normally if people tell you half the truth, when they know the whole truth, it's because they believe the whole truth is going to hurt their fucking argument, right? So they don't want to tell you all of it. The same report that they use to make that argument also says drug court participation increased in counties that changed the eligibility from felony to misdemeanor. Same report, same fucking piece of paper. The problem is drug courts were based on laws, obviously, prior to Prop 47. So the criteria for the court to put you into a drug program for the counties was you catch a felony dope case, and then you go into drug treatment. Well, when the felonies got dropped to misdemeanors, a lot of counties didn't change their requirements. You still needed a felony drug case to get into drug court diversion programs. People weren't getting felony drug cases anymore. So, of course, participation dropped. People weren't fucking eligible. But over here, where you changed it and said, okay, a misdemeanor dope case can get you into drug court, participation increased. So it's not as if everybody's just like, oh, California's a free-for-all, right? And I understand the image that California has. And to some extent, it's deserved. But don't let all the rainbow flags and DEI conversations and the Sodom and Gomorrah of the culture wars fool you. When it comes to policing and incarceration and that kind of stuff, California is as conservative as it gets. It has led the nation for generations on shit like this. And this is just another thing in that pattern. So here's the problem with this though, right? Because I'm all for people getting treatment. I'm all for all of that stuff. There's more people who want treatment than there are beds for people to go to, okay? Like 20 counties in California don't have a single residential program. So what happens if you're in that county and you catch a drug case? What? Treatment mandated felony. Go to treatment or go to prison. There's no treatment for 3 fucking hours. Where am I going to go? Right? But then you're going to go to prison. Because all of these things have attached to it, you must serve your time in prison. No more of this county jail time. You got to go back to the joint, right? You got to go to prison. And why? The prison industrial complex, which is a highly politicized term, and I don't mean it in that way. What I mean by it is just all those who profit off of people going to prison. So obviously the correctional officers and the guards and the judges and the DAs and even some public defenders, depending on what their funding stream is, right? But also the walking horse and the access catalogs and those who provide packages to people that are incarcerated, those who provide the canteen services, the truckers that bring the stuff in and out, the companies who use people in prison's labor to benefit themselves. It's a large conglomerate, right? There's a word for you. It's a large conglomerate of public and private businesses and people who make a shit ton of money off of individuals being housed in the California Department of Corrections. And the money, Prop 36 is going to take from that money that Prop 47 created. But that money wasn't initially a bunch of money, because just because the prison population started dropping, right, in California after Prop 47 doesn't mean that a bunch of money was saved, because prisons weren't actually closing. Guards weren't getting laid off. So yes, the flow of people into the prison slowed down a lot. I think the population went down by like 9,000 in 5 months, right? Just based on Prop 47. So the influx of people slowed down, but they were radically overcrowded. Overcrowded to the point that the courts were like, this is ridiculous. This is unconstitutional. You know, you got to do something, right? And so that Prop 47 was part of that. But then they brought the people from out of state so that the prison population was offset a little bit, right? But still, nonetheless, the flow was reduced. But that doesn't mean the staff was reduced. It still takes, this was CDC's argument, it still takes this amount of people to run this prison. Whether we're at 120% capacity or 100% capacity or 80% capacity, we still got to have a CO in every guard tower, COs in every building, staff, captains, lieutenants, whatever. So there wasn't as much savings as people anticipated until finally prisons started closing, right? And that was, I think, 2021 when Newsom closed Tracy. And that's after lawsuits and fights with CDC and everything else. Then you start seeing big savings. And it's odd because some of these same mayors that are pro Prop 36 misuse their Prop 47 money for the fucking programs. Like, they didn't do their part, right? Their cities, their areas haven't done their job in investing that money properly, but yet now they're in favor of Prop 36. It's a sham. So now that we're going to have more people going into prison, that money that was being saved, there's not going to be so much of it for programs that we do know works, right? Prop 47 funded programs have like a 10% recidivism rate, which is a hell of a lot lower than people just going to prison in general. So there's not enough of those programs. There's not enough of those beds. But to the extent that they exist, they are beneficial, okay? But so people are going to go to prison. That's what's going to happen when you catch dope cases. Even in larger counties, right? Sacramento, San Francisco, that kind of stuff. Sacramento has empty beds right now in residential drug programs because they don't have this, and they have a waiting list of people who want those beds. They don't have the staff for those beds. It's not a great paying job. It's super expensive to live in California, which gets to the homeless thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. But they're just not staffed. They don't have the resources to use. The private facilities, oftentimes, if you have a felony, you can't even go to the private ones. So that cancels them out, right? You can't have criminal records. So less people are going to get care. Less people are going to get treatment. There's not enough available as it stands. Now there's going to be even less. You have people in San Francisco who would rather sleep in a doorway in a Tenderloin than go into a shelter, particularly women and children, because it's less safe in the shelter than it is on the streets. That is a problem. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. The staffing at these facilities needs to be addressed. Prop 36 doesn't do a damn thing to do any of that. So California has real issues around drug use, around homelessness, around all this stuff. But Prop 36 doesn't do that. Prop 36 sends people to prison. We know from history in California, just sending people to prison doesn't fix the fucking problems, right? A lot of us have agreed on that. That doesn't mean no consequences. And I'll get to that part in a minute because the cops are playing a game with a lot of these communities. Like, Prop 36 is going to incentivize them to do their job. I wish I had that luxury. Like, you just go to work one day and decide, I'm not hella motivated, though, to do my job. Like, if you do something extra for me, if you pat me on the back, then I'll feel more, do your fucking job. They're not doing their job because they know that's forcing the public's hand. And there's a history of that. Like I said, I'll touch on that stuff in a second. But another aspect of Prop 36 is addressing all these smash and grabs. And you see these pictures, and we've all seen the viral videos of crowds of people running into stores and just busting shit up and taking what they want, and workers can't do anything, and people just shoplifting in front of everybody, and no care in the world, right? Because there's no consequence, right? So Prop 36 is supposed to fix that and say if you got shoplifting, your third shoplifting is a felony. That felony, you're going to go to prison. You don't go to the county jail. Go there for a second, but upon conviction, your sentence has to be served in prison. It's interesting that all those things, there's a real emphasis on you're going to prison, right? Why? Because prison savings, if you're saving money from the prison system, it means you're taking money out of their pocket, right? To save money from here and reinvest it there means you're taking money from them. You're not spending as much with them, and you're spending it someplace else. Those people, the prison industrial complex, they want their money back. They want their funding stream. Right? They're not thrilled with this. Nobody wants their money taken. They're no exception. But this is their attempt to get their money back. So here's the problem with this whole, the theory of this shoplifting and now it's a felony. This smash and grab robberies that we see, those aren't shoplifting. Those are robberies, right? There's several laws have been passed in California and they're being used. DA's offices, even Gascon, who's fucking letting out the Menendez brothers. He's even prosecuting people in LA County under these new laws, organized retail theft, And they're serious crimes. The feds have picked up some of these cases. So that's already being addressed with laws. Prop 36 doesn't do that. That's not shoplifting. 20 people run in a fucking store and steal shit. That's a robbery, homie. That's not what this is for. And this is the homeless person who walks inside and takes something. The mother who can't afford to live and it goes inside and takes something. I'm not condoning shoplifting. But this is not addressing what it's showing it's addressing. Even when I look up articles and I look up news reports, the videos that they show on screen when they talk about yes on Prop 36 or supporters of Prop 36 is a bunch of activities that are not addressed by Prop 36, right? So you're going to have a bunch of people going to prison over shoplifting. And this whole $400 versus $950 thing. Look, previous to Prop 47, grand theft in California was $400, right? Anything over $400 was grand theft. At that time, and even now, if that was the case, that was the second lowest in the country. New Jersey is 200, right? Everywhere else in the country was more than that. So Prop 47 raised that threshold to what, 950, right? And it's been said, law enforcement, supporters of Prop 36, they raised it. They over doubled it. Like that just opened the floodgates for crime. Understand 38 states in the United States, right? There's only 50. 38 of them, their threshold for grand theft is higher than $950, right? You got to say Texas is like $2,500 for it to be a felony. So the idea that raising it from $400, which was the bottom, to $950, which is still pretty close to the bottom, all of a sudden just made crime, flourish and there's no consequences. And it's just not rooted in reality. That's just not true, right? So that is, again, that part's not true. But to have people going to prison for shoplifting is ridiculous, in my opinion, right? Like, you go do 3 years in a joint because you stole a candy bar? Like, it's just to increase the prison population. That's all it's for. And the stuff that people are panicked about and people are tired of seeing on their TV isn't addressed by this. Then there's a 3 or more. 3 or more get caught committing shoplifting or property damage, and that's mandatory 3 years in prison. What I visioned, and it's not a stretch, again, if you look at how 3 strikes was applied, you got 3 dudes walking to the neighborhood. I've watched hood vlogs, right? Hood vlogs where dudes are tagging up on the wall, right? And there's a couple of them out there. And they go, and I'm not advocating spray painting your neighborhood on a wall or garage. That shit's ridiculous, right? It's very juvenile. It's juvenile behavior. But does some person go to prison for 3 years for it? It's a bit of a stretch. But if there's 3 or more, there you go. Property damage. It's going to be used outside of people in their minds are picturing property damage. You run in, smash and grab stuff. And that's property damage. Or they're knocking over shelves and all this other stuff. And that's not the way it's going to be used. There's already other laws with a hell of a lot harsher penalties that can be used. This is going to be used as much as DAs can because that's what they do when you give them that power, right? 3 or more get busted shoplifting. I go into the store with my old lady and my brother, and I see something that I don't feel like paying for, so I grab it, right? It's illegal. It's wrong. There should be a consequence for that. But I'm stealing it on my own. My old lady doesn't see me. My brother's over there looking at clothes, but security watches the 3 of us walk in together, and they watch us walk out together. You mean to tell me they're not going to call that organized, like the 3 of us did it together? Oh, his brother was a lookout and his lady was a lookout. And we see that shit all the time. We see that with gang laws. We see that with all that stuff. So they're going to abuse this power. And then people are going to turn around and be pissed off. Damn, fool, how the fuck I get 3 years in prison? I just walked in the store with you. And you stole a bar of soap. Like, damn, that's what's going to happen. And the last point, and I'll wrap this video up, this whole incentivizing police, this whole idea of now all of a sudden, because there's felonies on the table for these dope cases, people are going to go to treatment. But there's no treatment for them to go to, so they're going to go to prison, right? And now all of a sudden, because there's felonies on the table, people are going to stop breaking the law. People are going to stop stealing. People are going to stop doing all this stuff. The clearance rate for shoplifting is as low as it's ever been. That means people aren't getting arrested, right? Shoplifting is still against the law. You can still be arrested and booked into the county jail for shoplifting. Cops aren't doing their jobs. Why aren't cops doing their jobs? You know, in the legal arena, there's been times where the DA's office pisses off a police department, right? Whatever happens, their own little internal politics, but they piss off the police. And the police respond by, and it's all unofficial, but the police respond by suddenly not having officers available to show up to trials, right? So DA pisses somebody off, and now you got this case. You need officer so-and-so to come in and read the report. Officer so-and-so's out sick. DA got to drop the case. That doesn't happen very many times before the DA comes back on their knees ready to do whatever's necessary for the cops to get back on their team and show up in court. They use their power to persuade folks in situations like this. Cops aren't responding. Well, what's the use? We keep arresting when they come back out. Okay, but that's not your job. You're not prosecutors. Your job is to arrest people that break the law. There's law enforcement. Literally, that's what you fucking do, right? But they're choosing to not enforce the law. They're allowing for this shit to continue and then complaining that it's the voters' fault. It's Prop 47's fault. There's a contingent of people that have been trying to figure out how to roll back Prop 47 since before it passed, right? And they're using all this shit that happened during the pandemic, the swings in crime, the swings in shoplifting and retail theft, all of that, pandemic related, much more than Prop 47 related, if you look at the numbers, right? It's much more influenced by the whole lockdown in California. But regardless, when cops turn around and we're just not going to respond to burglaries anymore. We're just not going to respond to shoplifting anymore. We're just not going to respond. Okay, you're paid. You have a fucking job. Go do your job. You're suddenly going to be incentivized to do your job now because the odds that somebody's going to go to prison is higher. Whether they go to prison or not is not relevant to your job. You go investigate and put the cuffs on them. Then your job is done. Move on to the fucking next one. But they're doing that to leverage public opinion. Why? Because it's budget. They're wrapped in with this whole same prison industrial complex and they're losing money. They're losing power. So they're all playing together as a team and coming up with this bullshit Prop 36 and telling people it's going to solve all these problems. The homeless problem, nothing in Prop 36 has a damn thing to do with homelessness. The argument is, oh, well, look at these viral videos again of people on Skid Row and people in the Tenderloin, and look at all these addicts. Just a bunch of dope fiends that are fucking homeless. Well, now when they get arrested for dope, they're either going to go to prison or they're going to go to treatment, and then they're not going to be homeless anymore because the treatment's going to work. And they don't want to go to prison. They're going to be just fine. First of all, most homeless people aren't dope fiends, right? Most homeless people aren't addicts. But also, again, we've already talked, the treatment, all that stuff is not there. And there's no funding for Prop 36. It's taking money away from funding that already exists for programs to help people like that. So it's just, they're saying anything to get people on board because Californians are fed up. They're tired of the videos. They're tired of the news reports. They're tired of this idea that crime is out of control. Retail theft is up in like 5 counties. All the rest of the counties is down. But those 5 counties get a lot of attention, right? Oakland, San Francisco, San Mateo County, LA County. So it's perception. But there's a difference sometimes between perception and reality. And people want something to happen. They want something to be fixed. Some of these same politicians that are saying yes on Prop 36 are the same politicians that need to be held accountable for not doing their job up until this point, right? So anyways, that's my video, man. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. And just look into this stuff, man. I'm not asking you to take my word for anything. This is just my view, but I do encourage you to do some homework. You know, and even if you've already voted, but if you've learned something new here, then maybe have a conversation with somebody who hasn't. And if you're outside of California, pay attention because what happens in California when it comes to this stuff winds up happening throughout the rest of the country too. All right, you guys, take care.